Hey YouTube, this is Justin aka Demonic Sweaters here for linuxmusicstudio.com, and today I finally am doing my Milkytracker effects tutorial. I know I promised this to some of you guys about 2 years ago, and I failed miserably. What can I say? I was never able to do it, or I just didn't have time, or I forgot, or all of the above. So here it is. Anyway, before I get started here, I just wanted to remind you, if you like these kind of videos, please click subscribe, click the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos, and check out my Patreon page, which is just patreon.com/linuxmusicstudio. And if you become a patron, you will be automatically signed up or granted access to my Discord channel, which will allow you to chat directly with me as well as with other Linux producers in the channel, and get answers to questions and just hang out and whatnot. Anyway, let's get to the tutorial. So, Milkytracker is a tracking software, and if you're watching this tutorial, you probably know that already. And audio trackers or music trackers date back to the earliest days of computers, and I already made some Milkytracker tutorials a while ago, and explaining the basics and samples and all of that. And what this one is going to be focusing on is the effects that you can do in Milkytracker. Now, effects, when we talk about effects in trackers and Milkytracker, we're not really talking about how effects work in things like LMMS or Ardor or even Pro Tools and those type of software, which have real-time effects like reverbs and those type of things that are plugins, and you essentially put them on the channel and they process the sound in real time. Now, the way these work, it's a little bit different, or it's a lot different actually. Effects in Milkytracker are really talking about manipulating the individual samples. Sorry, I keep shaking the camera, I hit my desk. But they're talking about manipulating the individual samples, which is how, in a way, how Milkytracker or all trackers work. They have samples that are triggered as they scroll down through these lines, and each of those numbers there and letters, those are all samples being triggered. And so if we look over here in Milkytracker, where this cursor is right now, the last three placements there, or whatever you want to call it, digits, are the effects. And basically the way that these work is the first one is going to be a number that signifies what effect you're going to be using on that particular sample, and then the second two, these ones, are going to be basically the parameters of those effects. Now, before you even get into this, I highly suggest that you go to the Milkytracker website and look at the manual, because the manual basically is how I learned all this stuff that I'm teaching you here, and I'm going to be using this as I go through it because I can't remember all this stuff a lot of the time especially after I take breaks from Milkytracker and then get back to it. I'm like, how do I do this again? So I have to look at the manual. But okay, the way that this works though is these are the effects right here, and it shows you all of the numbers for each effect and what those actually do. And then down below here we have something called subcommands. And these are things that came about later on in tracking history, and basically they're just more additional effects. And then in Milkytracker, as well as in Fast Tracker 2, which is what Milkytracker is sort of modeled after, you have something called extended commands, as well as volume column commands. So I'm going to try to get through as much of these as I can, or at least, some of each of these, so you can get an idea as to how all this stuff works. So, yeah, anyway, the volume column commands are actually a different column, and that is these two right here. So those are the volume column commands. But we're going to start on the effects commands. So what I did is I started a new Milkytracker project a few days ago, and I'm going to play you back what I have so far, and then I'll get into explaining and showing you demonstrations as to how some of these effects work. So here we go.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. You hate it on Mars.
Okay, so that's all I have so far. And what I want to do is actually, we'll just go, the first few sections here don't have any effects on them, so we're going to go to the first one where there actually are effects, which is right here. And the very first effect that we're going to learn about, and that's listed in the manual, is the arpeggiator effect, or arpeggio. And that's just 0. And as you can see right here, I have 0 going down on all of these placements here, and that's because I want the effect to go on the entire time of this particular what are they called? Pattern. In trackers, the effects don't always behave the same way as each other. And what I mean by that, well, you'll see this more as we go along. Some of them you need to have them all the way down on the track. Other ones you're just going to have them, you know, where the note is, you know, like just on this line, and other ones you'll have it in between. And it just depends on what the effect is how you're going to have to do it. Now, the first one we're talking about here, the arpeggio, it's not really an arpeggio. I guess it kind of is. But basically what it does is it takes the root note that you play here, and in this case it's B4, and then it quickly modifies that or changes the note to the semitone of whatever value you put in these two fields. So in this case, it's going to be a 7th and a 5th. So it's going to shift the note up very quickly to a 7th of a semitone, and then very quickly to a 5th of a semitone. And that's pretty much it. So as you can tell, let's just play this pattern back. And you can hear how it gives that, you know, kind of wobbly sound. And if I just remove these, and you'll hear the difference. So let's get rid of that. Now let's hear how it goes. Okay, so you can hear that's unprocessed, and then with the arpeggio effect. And to enter the arpeggio effect, you actually don't push 0. If you push 0, see, it does nothing. All you have to do is put in the actual values. So let's put back in the 7s, and then let's put back in the 5s. Okay, let's play that. And as you know, or you may not know, Milkytracker works, or most trackers work in hexadecimal rather than actual numbers. Or, I mean, hexadecimals are numbers. It's just a different system. So in order to go up past 9, so if we wanted to go to 12, hexadecimals work, they go 1 through 9, and then they start A, B, C, D, E, F. And then they go in that order. So if we wanted to go to an octave, that would be 9, A, B, well, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that would be A, B, C. So if we put in a C here, it should shift this up an octave. And so it did. So now we have an octave and then a 5th. So it's just a little bit of math you have to work out in your head. It's not that hard once you know how to do it. So I'm going to go back to the 7th because I like the way that sounds. And then let's move on to the next effect, because that one's pretty easy, I think. So we have down here, after that, we have 3 effects that are very similar here. We have portamento up, portamento down, and then portamento to note. And what that means, portamento just means when one note slides to the other note. I'm sure you've heard this many times when a keyboard, it's often used on leads, or if you want to get that kind of bending note sound where it goes like, you know, smoothly from one note to another. That's what portamento is. And all 3 of these do it. They just do it in different ways. So we're going to talk about that now. And let's go to a column, or sorry, a pattern where I'm actually using that. Okay, so here we go. In this column, I used the first 2. We have 2, which is portamento down, and then we have 1, which is portamento up. And remember where I was talking about before, some effects you need to have all the way through. Some you need to have only in certain spots. To use these most effectively, what you have to think about this as is more of like it's less of a portamento, it's more of just like a bend. So when you have portamento down selected, which I do right here, let me play back. Well, first off, let me slow this down a little bit. I'm going to slow it down so you can hear this more clearly. Let's play this pattern. Okay, so you can hear how those notes, they slide down and then up here it slides up. So in order to do this, you know, what's happening here is the portamento down command tells Milkytracker to take this sample and start shifting it down in pitch, and then these numbers are the speed. So this particular effect is very sensitive, and 1 and 2 are both very sensitive, and so you can see I only have the value of 0, 1 in the first one, and then 0, 2 in the second one. So the closer your notes are together, the faster you'll want this speed to be. So here they're kind of far apart, so I'm only using a value of 1 to slide it to that other note. And then right here, when we have G5 or G sharp 5 to G5 on this particular one, it's less space in between, so I sped it up to 2, and I just wanted that note to glide up a little faster. And then same thing here, we're using the portamento up feature, and I started out a little slow, and then I speeded up to a 2 in between. So if we were to take this same concept, and let's do 2 here, and let's put in, you know, about down to here, and you'll see what will happen. Actually, let me do it longer than that so it's more exaggerated. Oops. You're going to see what will happen with the speed and how quickly it will change. So let's start out the first 4 at 1. Then let's go to, I don't know, 4. Let's go to 5. And then let's go to 10. And you'll see how drastic that actually changes. So let's play this back. Now I actually have that muted there. Let me delete that mute. That's a mute, that weird looking bar. Let's play that back now. So you can see how quick 10 actually changes the pitch. So that's if you want like a drastic effect. If you go up even higher than that in value, you'll end up going, like the pitch will go so strong it'll be pretty much out of the range of your hearing. So that's all I'm saying, is just kind of go a little bit soft there, or easy with the numbers, and you'll have better luck with that. So that pretty much explains portamento up and portamento down. Now, portamento to note, the third one, is a little bit trickier. This one is like, let me see if I even use this in here. Let me go to the next pattern. I think I use it somewhere. Did I use it here? Yeah, okay. So, portamento to note. This one is basically, okay, rather than in portamento up and portamento down, if I were using that command here, I would do it after this note, and then in between, I want that value to change to this note. However, portamento to note, you need to have the note that you start with and then the note that you end up on. You need to have that before you put in the command, because it takes this note and then with this command over here, the effects command, it will slide up to this note, G5 after E5, depending on the speed that you put over in the values. So if I play this back, maybe you'll understand this a little bit more. This one actually took me quite a while to understand what it was actually doing. So I'm just going to play it back and take a listen. Okay, so as you can hear, it's still sliding up, and it's sliding up to G5, but it only happens after the G5. So the tricky thing about this effect is you need to kind of plan where you want that note to actually hit, and it's going to be at the end of your effects processing, or depending on how fast you do it. Like if you do it too slow, it won't even make it to the note, and if you do it too fast, it'll make it to it very quickly. So this is basically another way to do sort of the same thing that you did with the first two commands, but it just does it a little bit differently. The advantage of this one is you don't have to know like what speed to put in here to reach the note that you want to reach. It's going to reach this note regardless, well, if you give it enough time, where as opposed to commands 1 and 2, you have to basically play with it until you reach the value that you want to reach, depending on the speed of your part or your pattern and the value of the effects that you had put in there. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's a little bit confusing, and this one is kind of one of the harder ones to grasp, or at least it was for me. But once you figure it out, it's pretty easy. So that is portamento to note. So let's move on to vibrato. And I actually haven't put this one yet in this project, but I'm going to do it right now. And this one works pretty much the same way as the other ones. You have syntax as number 4. That's your effects command that tells it that it's going to be vibrato. And then your first value is going to be your speed. And your second value is going to be your depth. Speed being how fast the vibrato goes. Depth being how strong of a vibrato effect you get. So I think we can go ahead and put this here on this same note. So let's go ahead and change this. Actually, no, I don't know if I want to do that. Let's go ahead and, because I do want to keep this song. I kind of like how it's going. Let me play this pattern. Okay, let's put it here. So let's go ahead and put the 4 command on those. And we don't have to go past the mute because it'll stop there anyways. And then speed, let's put in, I don't know, like 4 again. And then depth, let's try something kind of strong, so let's do 8. And let's hear how that sounds. Okay, now that's not quite fast enough. I want it to be a little bit faster than that. So let's put this up to like 9. And hear how it sounds now. Alright, that's definitely more noticeable. If we turn the value or the depth up even more, let's put it up to the maximum, which is F, and play this back. Okay, and there you get the crazy sound. So you get the idea with that one. Vibrato is going to be changing the note up and down depending on the speed and depth that you put in the effects parameters here. So let's get rid of this. I don't really want to keep that in the song. And let's see what's next. That one's pretty easy, I think. Next we have portamento to note with volume slide. Okay, this one is another tricky one. And it works similarly to the number 3 command, which is portamento to note, except it also has a volume slide in there as well. And what that means is it uses the, if we read it right here, performs portamento to note with parameters initialized with 3 or MX while sliding volume similarly to AX volume slide. And that is another effect we haven't gotten to yet. This one is a little bit weird, and I hardly ever use it, but I believe what you have to do is first you have to start out with a number 3, and then you can put in a number 4, like it shows right here. So if we go back, let's go back to our other pattern that we were working on before. Which one was that? What was I doing it on? I think this one. Play this back. Okay, yeah, we can do it here. So let's change this to a 5 after the 3. Oops. And let's see what happens here. So what you can see is it actually slid that volume down as it was still bending it at the same speed as it was. Okay, so what if we want to do a volume slide up and the portamento to note? So in order to do that, you have to do something like this, where what I did here is first I set the portamento to note value, which the first command, 3, and then 6 is the timing value that I wanted to that note to slide to the next note. And then I'm doing my volume slide down with the 5 command, and by using the second column after the 5 command, and then the volume slide up, because if you just do the volume slide up, it's already at maximum value, so of course it's not going to do anything, it's just going to stay the same. So if we play this back right now, you'll hear it'll get soft and then it'll come back up. So let's play it back. Alright, so that is how you do the portamento to note with the volume slide. So let me get rid of these. I just want to go back to my portamento to note and put my values back in how I had them before. And I think they were 6 all the way down. Let me just play this back just to be sure. Yep, okay, so now let's move on to the next section, which, where are we now? We're at vibrato with volume slide. This works the same way as portamento to note with volume slide, so I'm not going to go over that. It's just the vibrato effect by using the volume slide up speed and volume slide down speed, exactly how we just did it with portamento, except the primary effect is the vibrato rather than portamento. So it's the same thing. Tremolo is very similar to vibrato in the way that it works, except instead of changing the note up and down, it cuts out the sound, so it intermittently quiets it down. And let me give an example of this one, because this one actually sounds really cool. I like this one a lot. And let's go down here. Well, we can use... let's go to the next pattern. Find a better section to do this on. Alright, let's try it right here. And I believe that was... what was the number on that one again? Oops. 7. So, okay, so let's go put 7 all the way down here. And let's put 9s for speed. And depth, I'm going to put it up pretty high at, I don't know, let's put it at B. And let's hear how this sounds. Okay, pretty cool. Let's make it a little more drastic. Let's do it all the way up to F so you can hear drastically how this sounds. And let's speed it up even more. Let's go to, I don't know, C. Okay, so you get the idea with that one. Not really the best sample to try that on or to show you the example of that, but regardless, you still get the idea, I'm pretty sure. And that one is pretty easy. It's pretty much just like the others. Some of these are pretty easy. Some of them are a little more difficult. Panning position. This one is pretty simple too. And all this is number 8, and then you have 2 numbers are your panning position. Now the way you want to think about this is the lower the value, the further left it's going to be, and the higher the value, the further right it's going to be. So if we just go ahead and we'll use this same track as our example. Let's do, see here, okay, now this is one that you don't need to have all the way down. You can just put it on the actual notes that you're working on. So let me do that. Okay, so if it's set to 0, you'll hear that this pans it all the way to the left first. So let's play that back. Okay, and then if we do the opposite, the highest value we could put in here is FF. So if we just go through all of these and put in FF, play that back. Okay, so now it's on the other side. And if we do anything in between, you'll get a varying distance between left and right. So if we do like 0F, this should be still a little bit, or mostly to the left. And let's play it back. Okay, so you get the idea. You could even swap it back and forth. You can go, you can do all Fs on one, like every other one. And then you can do all zeros on the others. To have that kind of going back and forth panning effect. So let's play that. Alright, and that's a pretty cool, fun effect to do. And I kind of like that there. Actually, I might leave it. So let's go ahead to the next effect. And I think you got an idea how to use that one. Sample offset. Okay, now this one is useful if you have a loop, which I'm not using in this particular pattern, or what is it, song? Mod. I'm not using a loop in this particular mod, but what this is good for is, say you have a loop that you're using, like a beat, a drum loop or something, and it doesn't quite start up in the right spot. You can use this sample offset to actually offset where it actually starts, and that can be useful for something like that. I'm not really going to show you an example because I just don't really have anything good to show you. And but it's one of those things, you can think of it as a timing change. So it will basically change the beginning of where that sample starts. You could also do that in a sample editor. So you might not even need this, but it's kind of nice in a way, because what you can do if you're using loops, you can start the loops at different points, or the one loop at different points. So if you have one loop with a bunch of different sounds in it, or a bunch of different parts of the beat, you could trigger the beginning or the middle of the beat or the end of the beat, or however you want to do it, all with this command. I really should have, maybe the next tutorial I'll do more in depth about that, but for now I'm going to not show you an example, sorry. But there are other examples of that on YouTube, but it is a really great way to do that. You can also do some neat effects with this too. You can basically change the offset. Oh, I know what I can do with it. Okay, so this is fun. Let me see if I can remember how to even do this. Yes, okay, I remembered. So this is a very cool effect, and it's very 90s sounding. What I'm going to do first is start a whole new... Let's create a whole new pattern down at the end. Let's do insert, and then I'm going to do... Okay, so there's 15. Now what I'm going to do is select this vocal sample here. Let me go back to my first track. Make sure record is off.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million...
Okay. Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. You'd hate it on Mars.
Okay, that sample is actually from Total Recall. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one. And this is really cool. Like, you're really going to like this. So let's turn on Record Enable. And I'm going to... Wait a second. Turn off my note jumping there. I'm going to put this down. I don't know, to about there. And let's go back to the beginning. We're going to put in our 9 effect command here. And I have to look at this manual again real quick to remember how to do this. Okay, that was really weird. I don't know why, but for some reason it was triggering the wrong sample slot there. So let me try this again. Okay. Now let's try this one more time. Let's go back and put in the 9 command. And then let's put in a value here. All right, now let's play this back.
We've been through.
Okay, so as you can see, what is happening there, it's jumping the sample placement. So if we start increasing this like this.
We've been through.
Okay. Let's do this a little more slowly. So I want to put zeros in here. We're going to start the first one at 0. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, D, E, F. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. So we're going to do that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, D, E, F. And then okay, so if you understand what I'm doing here, what I'm doing is starting the sample position at different points and gradually increasing it. So what this is going to do, let me just play it back and you'll hear what it's going to do.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million.
So if we keep doing that, let's continue it even more.
Sweetheart,
Let's go all the way down to the end. It's basically, this is an effect you would hear a lot in the 1990s because this is exactly how they used to do this. And a lot of 90s techno is made in trackers. And this is one of the cool things that you can do that, you know, it's kind of hard to do this same effect in newer software. So let's continue with the 2s. Okay, now let's go to 3s. All right, now let's play it all back and you'll hear. Now, if we had more space, you know, we could have it to where it goes through that entire phrase at that, you know, kind of slowed down. What's the, there's a name for that, but I can't remember what it is, but it's that effect sound. But anyway, I think you get the idea as to what this is doing. And this, if you have a short, of course, you could always speed up those values to make it through it faster. And this is just one of the interesting effects that you can do with this 9 command. There's a lot of experimentation that you can do with this particular effects command. So yeah, that's all I'm going to do on that one for now, but I think you know, you probably understand how this is working, hopefully. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. So let's move on. That one's pretty cool. Let's get to the volume slide, which you kind of already know how this works. This is the A command. We talked about that a bit in the volume slide with portamento command earlier, and it works pretty much the same way. You're just going to use A as your syntax to trigger the effect, and then you have the first position being this column right here is going to be your volume slide up, And then second command would be volume slide down. I don't think I need to show you that, so we're just going to move on. Next after that, jump to order. Now this is pretty cool because this can be useful if you have, like, if you cloned a pattern and you want to make it shorter for a particular one, if you have an intro or something like that, you can use this command to jump to the next pattern in the order or of the song, but it'll jump immediately after whatever line you put that on. So if I were to, let's just go ahead and do this. I don't know. Let's make a clone. First off, let's clone this pattern. So we have a clone of our vocal effect. And if we go up here to the original one, and let's put that B command right here. Let's play it now. And you'll see that just jumped right to pattern 0 by doing that. So if we go back to this one, you can also do, let's put in our next pattern, which is 2C. If we put that there, it'll jump to the next pattern, so let's try it. So this is another way that you could arrange songs or make, jumps between patterns. It's a pretty cool trick that you can do interesting things with. You can have the same pattern but have it go to different ways. You can create infinite loops, which you have to be careful about, because if you're playing it back in a tracker or a mod player, you can end up getting stuck on the same song forever, so you don't want to do that. So anyway, that is the jump to pattern command. Let's move on, or jump to order command rather. Set note volume, this one's pretty easy. All you do is you just put in C and then whatever volume you want that note to be at. I actually use this already in some of these patterns, so let's look at one of those right here. Let's play this pattern back. Okay, so if you can see, all on these last 3 channels here, I have different volume selected. Well, actually, no, I lied. I did this in a different way. I use the volume column on these, which I set by putting in this number right here, 30. So this essentially is the same thing as using the volume column, which I haven't gotten to yet. But if I were to take this, okay, I'll just do it over here. And put C. Oops. C right there. Now it's gonna, let's mute everything but channel 4. And play that back. Okay, so you can hear it muted those notes. If we just raise this up a little bit, they'll be quieter. So that's how that works. Pretty easy. Basically, this one, what I thought I did before, what I tried to show you, this 30 right here, this is essentially the same thing. It's just done in the volume column rather than the effects column. Okay, so after the volume command, let's see what's next. Pattern break, oh sorry, after the pattern break, let's see what's next. We have fine portamento up. Now this works pretty much exactly like portamento, except it's slower. That's all it is. I'm not going to go over that. And same with fine portamento down. Okay, glissando control. This is something that I have never really understood. I'm not going to pretend like I do, so I'm not going to go over it. I know it has to do with the portamento settings, and I assume that it changes how portamento reacts, though I have never really noticed a big difference, so I never really mess with it. So if somebody has a better explanation for that one, feel free to chime in below, but I'm just not even going to go over it. Vibrato control. this one, oh, okay, sorry. We are in the, I didn't even mention that we're in the extended commands section. And what extended commands are is any of them that has the E. So basically you have E and then whatever command that is, and then you only have one parameter to control on the extended commands as opposed to two. So what I mean by that, if we look here, what we would do for an extended command, let me go back to one of my new patterns that I created here. And what happened to it? I deleted all that? That's weird. Okay. Oh, I'm in the wrong track. No wonder why. And go back. There it is. So let me get rid of... Actually, let's go to 16. So what I'm trying to say is if, say we put in a snare drum hit here. Okay, so extended commands would be E first, and then whatever command, effect command you're going to use there, and then you have your parameter after that. So before we actually show you some of those, though, let me go back to the manual, and we'll talk about vibrato control. This is basically another fine control you have over the vibrato command. And again, this is not something I use that much, but you can if you want to play with it. Basically, it changes the type of waveform that you have. You have the sine wave. Actually, this is something that I probably should use more. I just have been lazy, so I haven't used it. But it looks like some pretty useful commands there. You can change your waveforms for the vibrato, and that's pretty cool because you have a sine wave, which is a smooth wave, ramp down, which is going to be like a ramping down wave. Square wave obviously is like, ramp down is actually a saw wave. That's another name to call that. And then you have a couple other ones there. Right here, note fine tune. This is if you wanted to get into micro tunings and things like that, which is pretty cool. Or if you have a sample that's slightly out of tune, you can play with it with this command and get those in tune. All right, so pattern loop. This is another one that's pretty useful. And what you could use this one for is if instead of putting in, the same pattern a bunch of times here, if you wanted it to go several times in a row in the arranger section, you can actually use pattern loop like this. So we could go E6, and then let's do 3 times. So it'll play 1 time all the way through normally, and then it'll loop that pattern 3 more times, giving us a total of 4 times. So if we go to the pattern before it, let's delete this out of here so it doesn't go back, or it doesn't jump ahead. And let's get rid of some of these so we have something that sounds a little bit different. Okay, and then let's go back just one more, and we'll start playing the song from here.
We've been through.
All right, so you get the idea. It's just another way to tell the tracker or the player to continue looping that part the designated amount of times. So that's that. Tremolo control. This is similar to the vibrato control, and all of the other controls. Gives you different waveforms. We won't go into detail about that. E8, set note pattern panning position, not pattern. Panning position. This is just another panning command, which is kind of the same as the other ones. All right, so our next example here is going to be the re-trigger note extended effect. Now, this one is another one that I think is really cool. It's another thing that I use quite a bit, and you can do some cool stuff with drums, like create fills and just some interesting effects. So let's just get into it. What this does is it basically re-triggers the same sample on that track. So if we go here on this first channel, this is the kick drum. So I typed in my E command, the 9, and the thing is with this particular command is it's heavily dependent on how fast your speed is set and your BPM. So because it works by the ticks, and each line in a tracker is called a tick. So if we play this back and I have this set to 1, it's going to resample that particular sample. It's going to re-trigger it one time before it reaches the next line. So let's go ahead and play this back.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. You'd hate it all.
Now, because this is moving so fast, if I were to change that value to a 2, you're probably not going to hear anything. Oops. Let's play this back again.
Sweetheart, we've
Little
been
bit.
through this a million.
But if I were to slow it down, so if I go to speed and change that to a 4, now let's play it.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million.
So it gives it time to re-trigger that sample in there in the speed. Now, it's a little bit weird, a little bit confusing. I may not be explaining it exactly right, but you kind of have to play with it to get things to sound on time, but it allows you to do cool things like very fast snare rolls or something like that. You could do, basically you could combine that with a volume swell. For example, you could use, let's just go in, let me delete this. Let's delete this one. And let's go where I put that snare hit down at the end. So for example, what we could do is take that snare hit that I put in before, and let's put in our E9 command here. Oops. E9. We'll put our 1s here to give us that snare drum roll. Let's hear that first. Okay. And if we put a volume increase on that as well, we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we go here. That should be enough. Let's mute channel 1 so you can hear it. So you can hear that gives us a nice volume swell. And that's what you can do with that. All right, let's move on. Let's go to fine volume slide up. I don't think we need to go over that. It's just another volume slide, except with a finer, more subtle, gradual raise up and down. Same with volume slide down. Note cut. This basically turns off a note. It works the same way as mute, which is what I usually use, so I don't really need to go over that. Mute, if you're on Linux, is your caps lock key. And let's see, note delay. This is very similar to the note cut, except it also is very similar to the sample position. Pattern delay. This delays the pattern amount of rows. And I know I'm kind of skipping through a lot of stuff here, but there's a lot, so I'm not going to go through every single one. But set song speed. This one is, you basically don't have to use this in Milkytracker, but if you're using something like Pro Tracker or an older tracker, you have to use this. And what's good about this is it kind of overrides any setting you have on your tracker. And if you're playing back, it's probably a good idea to use this if you plan on, uploading your modules to the mod archive, because if they play it back on any player whatsoever, as long as these are set in there, it will play at the correct speed. So it's a good idea to use those. And the way that those are done is just by typing in F and then speed and BPM value. You kind of have to translate that into hex numbers, but it explains it right here. Set global volume is G, and then this will turn everything up or down. excuse me, global volume slide if you want to do a fade out. That's a good way to do that. Key off. What is this one? I'm not sure about this one. Oh, it's basically the same thing as the, that's what I'm calling mute, I'm pretty sure. Envelope position. This is one I have never really used, but if you are messing with panning or any of the modulating plugins, then this will decide where in that position you want it to start. Panning slide. Now this one's pretty cool because it will allow you to pan and slide that pan rather than being like drastic, you know, one side or the other side. It can actually slide it back and forth, and it works the same way as all the other slides do. Retrigger note with volume slide. This is very similar to E9, but it has a volume slide in it. And let's see, trimmer. I don't believe I've ever actually used that one. And I'm assuming that it's similar to the, not vibrato, but tremolo effect, I think. But I'm not sure. Extra fine, portamento up. Not sure how useful that is. Maybe to some people, not to me. Set note volume. Are we in the volume column yet? Yes, I think, right? Yeah, this is the volume column. So volume slide up, volume slide down. These, you know, you get into different things here. These are all very easily understood. You're going to type in the letter and then a value, and then once it displays it, it looks like it shows these arrows. Let me just show you that real quick. So if we do go in the volume column here, or here, sorry. I'm hitting L, and it's turning that to an arrow. So this basically pans you left or right, and all this can be done in the volume column. But again, we're on like doing similar things that we can do with the other commands. These are just different ways to do them. Portamento to note, similar to the other one. I didn't realize you could do that in the volume column. That's interesting. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to try that. I haven't actually tried it. Okay, so I think at this point you probably get the idea for how to use these. Now, MIDI support. I actually am using my Midi controller right now, but it seems to do some weird stuff every now and then, like cause the wrong samples to go to a certain track. So I'm not real sure about that. Sorry this didn't go into super detailed examples as to some of these, but I wanted this tutorial to be a reasonable length, and I think it pretty much gives you the idea. And I'll post the link to the manual down below. And if you have any questions about these and you know anything that I don't know, feel free to post it down there as well, because I'm always learning stuff as well. I'm not an expert with Milkytracker, but I have used it to produce several songs, and you just sort of learn as you go, and you just think about what you want it to do, and then you're like, how can I achieve this effect? And then you can look through the manual and figure out how to do that. Oh, one more though that I should do that actually isn't even on here, because it's not really an effect, but there's certain things you can achieve in Milkytracker that are like effects, but they're not effects commands per se. Like, for example, let's unmute this. Let me find a good place to do this. Where's one of those leads? Let's hear this pattern.
We have this a million times.
Okay. So here's a good place to do it. If we copy this track that the lead is on right here, and let me see if I don't even remember how to do that. Let's look at the manual. Keyboard shortcut, I mean. Copy track. Shift F4, then Shift F5. Okay, so I knew it was something weird like that. So let's do Shift F4. Shift F4, and then Shift F5. Okay, now we pasted that track, the same track that we had here, we pasted it to this other channel. Now, if I type insert, or I press insert on my keyboard, it'll move all of those down by one tick. Now, if I change this volume to, say, I don't know, 20, And if we play this back, it's going to sound like a slight echo. So let's play it back and you'll hear what I mean. And this can be more exaggerated if you do some panning in there too. So if we, what was pan again? 8? If we put 8 here. Now keeping that volume slide in there at the same time will be difficult, so I'm not going to do that. Or the pitch slide, I mean. We'll just leave it how it is. But let's play this back now. And it gives it kind of a stereo image too. And if you wanted to make it even more drastic, you can move it down even more. So just go above where you want it to, or the first note, and press insert again. Now let's play it. Alright, so let's see what it sounds like too if we get rid of that slide. Let's put the 8 here. And so now only one of them is going to pitch slide up, the other one's going to stay the same. That's weird. You almost can't even tell. Oh, because it goes to the note anyways, so yeah, that's almost unnoticeable, so that is a good way that you can do it. Let's play it back one more time. And there you have it. Let's put this back to the normal speed. And this song isn't really done yet at all, but we did some stuff in there. Let's go ahead and play it back.
Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. Sweetheart, we've been through this a million times. You hate it on Mars. Sweetheart, sweetheart, we, sweetheart, sweetheart, we, sweetheart, sweetheart, we, sweetheart, sweetheart, we, sweetheart, we, sweetheart,
So there you have it. That's some Milkytracker effects. It's not everything that you can do, but that's a good bit of them. And I think hopefully this will give you an idea as to how to move forward and start thinking of things on your own. There's a lot that you can do just by copying tracks and doing like echoes and stuff like that, processing them differently on different tracks, all types of stuff that you can do. You can become very creative on these things. You know, if you listen to the stuff on the Mod Archive, obviously some people are really, really good at working with trackers. I've heard some amazing music on there, you know. So anyway, hopefully this helped you out. And if it did, feel free to subscribe and click like, click that bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. And be sure to check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Linux Music Studio. And I'll see you guys very soon. So have a great, great day and happy music making.